Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining, and welcome to the leadership panel that we're going to be hosting this afternoon for you. I think everyone knows me, but if you missed it yesterday, I'm Siân Gregory. I'm Research Grants Manager at Alzheimer Society, so I'm responsible for all of our research funding programmes. But I am not the star of today's panel by any stretch, and I'm joined by a very knowledgeable group of panellists today who are going to be having some questions from me at the start of the session, and then we're going to move to questions from the room and yourselves. So there will be a roving mic. Please do listen to our panellists and think about any questions you want to ask them about their leadership experience. And of course, if you have any questions about research or research grants, in particular at Alzheimer Society, please do talk to me or a member of my team. I think you've met us all at this point now. And we can answer any questions. Anything we can't answer, we will answer over email after the retreat as well. This is my fourth ECR retreat. I've been here since the first one. So apologies if anyone's seen me for 4 years running. And I think one of the things that really stands out for me about the ECR retreat is the passion that you all bring, whether it's your first retreat or you've come every single year. The passion and the networking at these events is just really infectious, and just being able to learn so much from where you are in your careers, what you're looking to do next, what your passions are for your different areas of research is something that just makes a massive difference to everyone who works at Alzheimer Society. So just want to make sure as well, as I've said, this is the leadership panel. So if you want to be in the science medias panel, you are more than welcome to go to that session. I'm not going to hold that against anyone, but just to make sure you're all in the right place. But as you've guessed from today's session title, we're going to be discussing leadership in lots of different forms and in lots of different ways. And the importance of good leadership is really hard to overstate. But I think one of the questions that comes up a lot in leadership is, what does make leadership good? How do we recognize good leadership? What are the qualities of good leadership? And really, the panel that we have today is going to give us experience from charity, academic, and corporate sectors to really think about how can we be the best leaders that we can be in our respective fields. And having, personally worked in a lot of different roles in both an academic environment and also a charity environment now, I really have seen the benefits of compassionate and flexible leadership. I've also seen poor leadership as well, which I think is something that's good to recognise. And particularly, when that is reflected in poor communication from teams, which can cause a lot of challenges. And now at the Society, I lead an absolutely fantastic team of research grants officers. Some are in the room, some are in the other session. And I often find myself reflecting on the kind of manager that I am, the leader that I want to be. And that's something that I've been really trying to think about. How do I shape who I'm becoming? So I'm really hoping as well I'm going to learn selfishly a lot from this session too. But one of the best ways that we can learn about leadership is to learn from more experienced leaders. And so I would like to just briefly introduce my fantastic panel today. I'm going to let them also introduce themselves as part of their sort of first answers, because they're going to do so much more justice to their experience than I can. But what we'll do is we'll hear a little bit from the panel, and then we'll pass over to you for questions. Sorry, let me just stay on target with my notes. So we are joined today by Simon Beacham from EDF. EDF are one of Alzheimer Society's corporate partners, and we've been involved in a lot of different activity with them, which has been really important for the charity. Joining Simon, we've also got Lucy Devendra, Dr. Lucy Devendra, who is our head of research at Alzheimer's Society and my manager. And she has extensive leadership experience from working in large charities in medical research. And then finally, but last but not least, we have Professor Dave Cash. So Dave is one of our dementia research leaders and has very excitingly recently secured tenureship at UCL. So congratulations, Dave. But we'll be able to tell you a lot more about his experience, both of academia and also, I believe, industry as well. So we'll get jumped in with some pre-prepared questions that I've got. So I'm going to come down the line. So if it's okay, Simon, I'm going to start with you.
Yep.
And if you could kick us off by saying a little bit more about the role that you currently do and about how you're currently using leadership experience to support your teams and the other people that you work with. And we'll go down the line, Simon, Lucy, and then Dave.
Oh, good. Good. It feels like we're not being interrogated. No, thank you. Firstly, thank you for inviting me along to this. The charity partnership with Alzheimer's Society is something that's really important to us at EDF. And myself, I've had personal experience of family members with dementia, and I'm doing some fundraising for you guys in the autumn, so I'm really, really excited to be here. In terms of the question that I was asked, so I have worked for EDF for nearly 20 years. I think 20-year anniversary is coming up next year. I actually started as a frontline member of staff, so on the phones, doing customer service work. Didn't have any plans, didn't have a career plan, but over a number of years, one of the advantages of working for a big organisation is there's plenty of different directions and opportunities to go in. And probably over that 20 years, I've had about 14 different roles. My current role is as Senior Operations Lead, and what that involves is managing a department of about 80 people and a customer portfolio of about 250,000 customers, and basically making sure that we're achieving the commercial aims of the business while trying to give the best possible service to those customers, while also looking after our people. In terms of what my team get from having a manager of my experience, probably you should be asking them really, but I'll have a stab. Firstly, this will sound weird to start with, but hopefully it'll make sense. I've never been afraid to be a magpie. So what I mean by that is, through 20 years of working in my organisation and industry, I've come across loads of different people, loads of different leaders, loads of different experiences and exposure, and I have collected things as I've gone. I've collected good examples, I've collected bad examples, and I've secreted them away into my own personal toolkit. And I am not afraid to collect an idea and then shape it to the new context in which I'm working. So the benefit of experience is the experience, and actually having that opportunity to try new things, see what works, and then learn from that moving forward. I've also learnt the power of a narrative and how important it is to get your team to be emotionally as well as intellectually engaged. And I love your research is hope sort of tagline that you've got for this event. We have something similar in EDF. It's about delivering net zero for Britain. And that's something that's in place to engender that level of commitment from the team. And finally, I am very much come to realise over the time that a manager's role, a leader's role, is not to put pressure on individuals to achieve success, but to create the environment in which they can do so. So that is what I try and do.
I really love that magpie approach as well, Simon. I think that's a really great way of putting it. Picking out those really gleaming examples of what good looks like and using them.
I'm glad that made sense.
It did. I liked it. It was a good comms analogy. Dr. Devendra.
Yeah. So hi, afternoon, everybody. So as Siân said, I'm currently head of research here at the Alzheimer's Society. So I've been in this role for about 2.5 years, but I've actually been on maternity leave for about a year of that. So it still feels like early days. So I think just to kind of say, maybe in comparison to my kind of other panelists, I am quite early on in that kind of leadership journey. Since I returned from maternity leave, my role has expanded, so I now manage kind of 4 distinct teams within the society. So Siân's team, as she's already alluded to, hopefully I'm not one of those examples of bad leadership that you described at the beginning. So that's all of our grants activity, everything that we do to support our response mode and strategic initiatives, also our research communications team. So that team translates our research for our various different audiences. I also manage our research involvement team, so our research network volunteers that we've heard a lot about, our participation team, our work with joint dementia research and Time for Dementia. So I think something that I've been reflecting on a lot is kind of this shift for me personally from kind of being quite a functional leader and being quite involved in the operational detail, and obviously taking on these responsibilities, that's kind of not possible. So I've definitely shifted to, as Simon's already alluded to, my role I see is more providing that kind of big picture, that vision. I think we're very lucky at Alzheimer's Societies that we have a very clear vision, and particularly in the research team, in terms of, you know, why we get up every day and what change we want to see for people affected by dementia. But I think, you know, as with any job, when you're in the day-to-day, you're dealing with emails, there's frustrating meeting clashes and things like that. The role of the leader really is to kind of be there to provide that leadership and that overall vision for the team, whilst also kind of being there to support with any kind of particular challenges, roadblocks, but also obviously providing that really kind of inclusive environment for the team and giving the team what they need to succeed. So that's very much a journey that I've kind of been on over the past year or so in my sort of current role.
Thanks, Lucy. And I think, just speaking as someone who directly experiences Lucy's leadership, she's not a bad example, just to clarify that.
Okay, thanks, Sharon.
But also, I think one
I'll
of the
pay you
things
later.
Lucy does really well, which could be an interesting question, is she's really good at empowering the people she leads to be able to lead their own work. And I think that's quite a difficult skill to master. So Lucy definitely is good at empowering me to do my job better, at least. So last but definitely not least, Professor Cash, over to you.
Hi. I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I came over to London from America in 2005, and I think it's important, a little bit of feedback, for ECRs to hear as much about failures as successes. And to be quite honest, the postdoc that I did when I came over in the UCL for my first 18 months was not a success. It was difficult. I didn't have the right skill set to match the role or to be in that lab. But the good news was I joined a startup. I joined an industry role after that. And that's actually where I really found what I wanted to do in terms of my academic research career. So it was involved in getting Alzheimer's disease trials set up, particularly the MRI scanners for studies. And after doing that for 5 years, I decided I wanted to come back into academia. And that's where I am now at the Dementia Research Center at UCL, where I am an engineer in a group of clinicians and psychologists. And so I provide a lot of the technical expertise, a lot of the imaging and data management and how we're going to do that for some of our large studies, as well as my own research and the research of my PhD students. And one thing I'll mention in terms of leadership is I found it quite different. I found it quite different when I joined UCL. The team I was running in industry was about 5 or 6 people. And then I started managing people who were PhD students, postdocs. And the difference really, I'm a sucker for sports metaphors, so you're going to have to bear with me here. But to me, when I was managing a team in industry, it felt like a team sport. It was like a team where individuals may have their own objectives and their own motivations, but ultimately it was through the framework and the foundation of a team. Whereas in academia, we really were talking more about the individual sports of like a tennis or golf or things like that, where you're managing an individual and a lot of their objectives and their success was defined on their individual performance. And obviously there's collaborations in academia, we all know that, but still ultimately people are judged more on their own rather than within the context of a team. And trying to understand that, and just in general, the nature of the people were different. We tended to have in academia a bit more free thinkers, a bit more creative, independent people who really wanted to do their own thing and seek out their own role, and sometimes that wouldn't work within the scope of what their job was. So trying to balance that was a bit of a challenge after being in academia, but industry. But I'll talk a bit more about I guess some of the other qualities later.
No, that's fantastic, and I think it's a really good reflection as well that your leadership style needs to flex around those that you're working with, and I imagine that's got a lot of shared overlap with everyone on the panel. I guess thinking more So, and hogging the lectern, so to speak, with another question. Thinking more about formal training, and Dave, if it's all right, I'll come to you and maybe work back down the line. Have you received any sort of formal training for leadership, or has your leadership experience kind of come from experience, or a mixture of the two?
It's mainly come from experience in both settings. We would have some consultants in industry, but I do recognize how important formal leadership is, and UCL has a pretty good leadership program that I'm going to hopefully get on in the autumn to sort of supplement like the real world experience.
So we need to ask you this question soon, and you can let us know which was more helpful. Lucy, do you want to come in next?
Yes, so I've actually just undertaken a leadership training program as part of the Alzheimer Society. So a few things to say about that. One, I would say that it was quite focused on the leadership qualities that are required at Alzheimer Society. So we have a leadership success profile. And I won't share what that is, but I think it was helpful in the sense of understanding what good leadership looks like in the context of Alzheimer's Society. And I think as a general point that you've alluded to, David, that is obviously different wherever you are. So I think getting a sense of what good looks like or what's expected of you in that particular role is really helpful. Two other things that I would share that I think were potentially really helpful maybe for this group. One, we kind of were encouraged to understand more about our own preferences. So obviously there's lots of different ways that people could do this through Myers-Briggs, for example. We particularly use this seasonal profile. I'm an autumn, in case anybody's done it. So I think that the reason that was helpful is because I think sometimes people have a preconception about what a leader looks like and what personality traits are required, or what kind of a style of delivery you might experience. And I would say an autumn, in case you don't know it, I'm a lot more analytical. I'm kind of more evidence-based. At Alzheimer's Society in particular, we have a lot of summers, and they tend to be, as you might describe it in another way, like a yellow, so very kind of people person, very sort of focused on the individual and team development. And that's not to say that I don't think that's important, but I couldn't always see myself in the profiles of other leaders. And I think the leadership training that we went through helped us to understand what our own strengths were and how we could adapt that to a leadership style that worked for us, and so you felt like an authentic leader rather than feeling like you were trying to fit in a box that wasn't kind of natural to you. So I think that was really helpful. And the other thing I want to pull from that was lots of what we did is around peer support. So we were put in small groups of other leaders, and what we've developed through kind of action learning sets, you may have experience of those types of activities, or just generally kind of working together more as a peer group. That's been really helpful. So I think, again, you don't necessarily need to be part of a development scheme, for example. I think reaching out to people that are maybe at a similar level to you, on a similar journey to you, and just getting together to share your experiences can be really kind of helpful and impactful in terms of helping you to grow in a leadership style as well. So those are two particular things that I found helpful from the recent programme that we've been on.
I think that's a brilliant flag as well, that representation of what a good leader looks like and how it's not a cookie cutter approach, I think is a really strong reflection. So last but not least, Simon, over to you.
Thank you. So fortunately, in the time that I've worked with EDF, I've had the chance to do lots of our internal sort of leadership training and upskilling, and just want to sort of echo what Lucy was saying about, if you get the chance to do it, because it's not only useful to find out about these tools and techniques, and then using the magpie analogy that I have now trademarked, you can take those forward into your careers. But the key thing that I get from any leadership training is the opportunity to interact and network with peers, to share experiences. Most leadership training will involve talking about experiences, sharing experience, shared problem solving, considering challenges and how you might overcome them as a unit. And it's that networking interaction that is so important. The only other reflection that I give is when I first started going on management training, it was management training. So sort of 15 years ago, you went on management training, and it was about managing processes, it was about managing tasks. Over that 15 years, you now go on leadership training, and it's about leading people. And that has been a massive shift in my experience of these kind of leadership interventions, where actually you don't achieve anything if you can't bring your people along with you. Part of that would be the sort of the psychological safety side of things is massive, and I'm sure we'll get onto that more through the rest of this. And also, I would just say that one of the things I've learned from those training is a problem shared is a problem halved is a famous saying for a reason. So that being able to build that network of people who can help you out when you need it is a massive plus.
Absolutely. And I think that peer support element really lends itself to sort of, Dave, what you were saying about the academic perspective, and even though the dynamic's different in terms of the team sports versus the tennis, you know, having that peer support network is still really crucial. Okay, so I'm going to ask a final question, and while I ask this question, I'd encourage you guys to get ready with your questions to be able to jump in. When we get to your questions, please do direct them to a member of the panel if they're a specific question for one of our panelists, or if it's an open question, let me know and then I can pick on members of our panel for you. So do have that in mind, and we've got Travis and Sarah who are going to be on the mics for us for this session. But we have heard a lot this morning about the importance of well-being. And we know that as leaders, you're not just carrying the responsibility of everything that you do and everything that you're responsible for, but you're also supporting people. And sort of, Simon, as you've already touched on, you know, making sure that the people that the teams you're responsible for are well cared for and well led. So I guess I'm going to pick on Lucy, because you've not been picked on yet, to start, and then I'll probably go Simon and then Dave. But it would be really interesting to know sort of how you protect your well-being as a leader, but also how do you protect the well-being of the teams that you're responsible for as well? And is it similar? Does it differ?
Yeah, thanks, John. And as you say, it's such an important topic. I think the phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup is something we hear a lot about. And I think, especially being like a relatively new parent, it's something that I also hear a lot when you read kind of books about mental health within in that space as well. And so I think it's something, that has resonated with me, and definitely kind of take on board that I need to kind of protect my own boundaries and make some time for myself in order to really adequately support my team. So kind of trying to do that wherever possible. We are really lucky at Alzheimer's Society that there are quite a lot of formal networks and support in place to support well-being. So I think as a leader, it's about being really aware of what those things are and making sure we're signposting to the appropriate place as well. I think for me, and again, something that I've definitely seen a shift around, particularly within Alzheimer's Society and looking at my peers and the leaders, is kind of being a more authentic leader and being quite open and transparent about your own struggles, about challenges that you're facing, and I think that's had a big impact on me and something that I do try and model with my team. So I am a working parent, that's something that I can particularly resonate with, so I think I'm quite open and transparent about challenges, or if there's a workload challenge for me, and hopefully that means that I'm creating an environment where we can have those kind of really open and honest discussions within the team about how people are feeling. Something else that came through our leadership program was around psychological safety, and it's something that I've read a lot about recently. There's a book that I would recommend called The Fearless Organisation by Amy Edmondson that really talks about the importance of psychological safety in generating high-performing teams, but I think it also links to this piece about well-being and around people feeling able within that team to share kind of what they're going through, so that peer support that we heard about it can be implemented. So yeah, and hopefully there's been lots from today's talks as well to sort of support on that topic too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lucy. Simon, come to you.
So I said psychological safety would come up, and it has. So absolutely, I would echo that. You don't have to hide the challenges you're facing. If you've got a sort of a healthy relationship with your team and the people that you're working with, then you should actually be able to share those. And I totally agree with everything Lucy was saying. The other tool, goes back to the training and sort of building that toolkit. There's loads of tools that can help with kind of resilience and dealing with those stressful situations. But the one that I come back to, and it's not a hidden secret, I'm sure people have heard of it before, but it is actually one that I refer to explicitly, if not on a day-to-day basis, certainly week by week, is the control circle. So really figuring out what is in your control, what can you influence and what is beyond your control. Because there is absolutely no point wasting stress and energy and anxiety on things that are beyond your control. If you want to worry about those things, then really think about how you can bring them from being outside your control and into your sphere of influence, and then you're in the game, and then you can start to do something about it. So, you know, that model, that way of thinking, I find is a really useful one for focusing on what's important, focusing on what you can do, because we can only do what it is realistic to do, and not worrying about the things that you can't control. And it gives you, the reason I really like it as a model is it's not just a way of thinking, it can actually turn into quite a practical exercise as well. You can sit down with your team members, you can have that conversation, you can draw it out on a whiteboard or on a flip chart, and you can say, right, we've got all these challenges, what are the ones that we can do something about today together? And then you can move forward from there with, and get into a solution space which will reduce the stress for everybody. So 100% psychological safety, but if you haven't come across the control circle before, it's a good one.
Thanks, Simon. Dave?
Yeah, I'd echo the points that Lucy and Simon made about protecting your time, the peer support, and the control circle element. I feel like I say that to my wife a lot at the moment. You can't control this element. A couple things I guess I was thinking more from the ECR perspective of is, one is sort of the fragility that can happen with imposter syndrome. You know, we come to these meetings, we see somebody come up and give a presentation, and all the work looks effortless. Their whole career looks effortless. It looks so easy, and you're thinking to yourself, it doesn't feel easy at all to me. And that's in part because we see other people presenting their best story, their best foot forward. We, on the other hand, are our own worst critics. We know exactly where our weak points are in the research, what we didn't like, how we want to do it better. And I think some of that's important. It's important not to be so assured of your science and research and that you didn't do anything wrong. But at the same time, I think it's important to criticize your own criticism of yourself. How much of it is valid, or how much are you being just a bit too hard on yourself? And one good test about that is seeing what your colleagues are saying about you and listening to people who can see you from the outside. And if they're, you know, valuing your opinion, saying you're doing a whole lot of good work, that's better than listening to your own inner self sometimes say, yes, but if only I would have done this in this experiment. And then the other thing I think in terms of protecting well-being is developing a skill that I wish I was better at myself, which is the art of saying no. I think there's a real art of saying no. It's very easy to say, yes, I can do this, yes, I can do that, yes, I can do that, and then your whole day is filled up with too many tasks, and you can't do them all. So finding a way to say no in a way that people respect that you've heard what they wanted you to do, you can't do it, you explain why, and people come out with not a confrontational or that you're pushing back, but that they understand where you're coming from, and you know, it doesn't block off another opportunity down the road. So finding how you can do that effectively and balance your own bandwidth in that regards is really important.
Absolutely, and I think you've touched on quite a lot of the talking points of the retreat so far. You know, we've had a session on boundaries this morning, but also I think from sharing your own kind of saying my first postdoc didn't go as planned. We heard from Dame Professor Louise Robinson yesterday that her career was not plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I think we got to. So I think, you know, that vulnerable leadership I think is really, really important.
Sorry, I can't let that imposter syndrome comment slide.
Go for it, Simon.
Without saying, try being me right now in a room of PhD scientists. So yeah, I'm feeling that.
I think being the critical friend there, Simon, you're definitely being too critical of yourself there. I think we all agree there's a lot we can learn. Okay, so let's open it up to the floor because I've dominated this conversation far too much. And we have our first question over here. A microphone is winging its way towards you.
Hi, that was really, really interesting. I was wondering what your sort of take is on empowering members of a team. And I was sort of thinking about models like distributed leadership. And are there, just from your own experiences, could you give any examples or any hints or tips about how, because it's all very well that word empowerment, isn't it? But you know, people are supposed to empower themselves. So how do you do it, or how do you support it?
I might, if that's open to the panel, I might go to Lucy first, just because I did say that you were good at empowering, so I've kind of...
I was just about to say, maybe Siân can answer that, because I mean, what I would say is, I'm certainly not following a model or a technique that I've learned, so it's great feedback to have, and I think feedback was something else that I was very keen to talk about in this session, and the need to kind of seek feedback and understand how you're doing and where you might still need to kind of, you know, improve or... So I don't know if, I'll give an answer, but I don't know if you have anything to share, Siân, about how I do that. I think it is that piece around giving people like genuine autonomy and trust to deliver. And I think setting that, you know, vision, expectation, kind of, you know, a shared understanding of where we're trying to get to, and then a genuine trust and autonomy and empowerment that somebody can go away and kind of deliver that. And I think we, you know, having those kind of open and honest conversations about, I think psychological safety links to that in terms of like if a team member's feeling they don't quite understand the task or they're not quite sure they're on the right trajectory, feeling completely comfortable coming to you and saying, actually, I need to check in with this. Is this the direction we're thinking? I'm experiencing this roadblock, and how you deal with that in a coaching way rather than a kind of a more of a management way of kind of dictating what you think should need to happen. So those would be my initial reflections. I don't know, Siân, whether you've got any, having been on the receiving end of this, clearly, I'm not sure if there's anything else.
I won't hog this too much, because I will come to our esteemed panellists. But I do think it is, I think from what I was inferring, it is that trust factor that's really important. But it's a balance between trust and an open door policy for when things go wrong or for when you need extra support. And I think there's a really good balance for me, micromanagement really kind of stifles me and makes me feel untrusted, and it's not always meant that way. But I think Lucy strikes a really good balance of trusting me to do my job, to have my ideas, but when I have those moments where I'm unsure or I'm in uncharted territory or something's come in that I've just never had to deal with before, I know there's no judgment to get that additional support, but I have to ask for it, and for me that's quite liberating, to kind of know when I need to go for support and when I'm trusted to just get on with my job. So that's what I mean. So which is kind of an extension of what you said, really. But let's go back to the panel. And Dave, I'm going to come to you. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a similar approach. So with my PhD students, for example, I always have a weekly hour placeholder. And it's not so much about, you know, micromanaging. It's what help can I give you at this moment? And if you don't need it, it's fine to say we don't need to meet this week, and we can meet another week. And also trying to find good opportunities for them to start growing. So with academic careers, you know, things like reviewing papers, doing grants, supervising master's students, things like that are all opportunities where you do one where you're kind of side by side with them and kind of giving them a bit more support, and then gradually you kind of pull back that support as they get to know it and do it a little bit better. But also make sure, particularly with the papers, I'm really pleased that a lot of journals are now saying, did anybody help you contribute to this review? So I can then say, my PhD student who's beginning to be an expert on this assisted me in the review, and I would, you know, appreciate them being part of, you know, your review panel at that point. So those are a couple things that. Yeah.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. And Simon.
Yeah, I just pick up on what David was saying about the growth side of things. So totally recognise the dilemma. I think it's one of the hardest challenges when you first become a leader or manager of other people, is to actually let that control go. You know, presumably you've got to that place because you're quite good at what you do, and therefore to actually trust somebody else to live up to those standards is often one of the big mental blocks that any new leader has to overcome. I mean, earlier I talked about a leader's role being to create an environment in which your team can succeed, and picking up on that growth point, that environment could start that big. So you set the boundaries, you set the framework of what you expect that person to do. They go and do a good job, they smash out the park, you widen the boundaries and you widen the framework of what you expect them to do. And over time, that constant widening of the boundaries will then lead to that level of trust and that level of knowledge of what that person is capable of and comfortable with in a really sort of controlled and comfortable way, where you can be comfortable that they know what they're doing, and they can be comfortable that they are supported and empowered to do what needs to be done. And then, effectively, when you've got to the point where that framework is so wide that you're basically just working in partnership with them, that's where you then start to push them on for the next opportunity. And that's hopefully a really practical way of seeing how you go from sort of managing a team member to then developing a team member and giving them the chance to succession plan maybe for your role or for a role that they're interested in the future.
No, thank you. I think that's a fantastic kind of thought, that it's more about partnership than dictatorship when you're thinking about like working with your teams. Okay, anybody else got any questions? We'll go over here and then we'll come to you, Sarah.
I have a question particularly for Dave. I think I really like the analogy about the team sport and individual sport for different type of leadership in industry and academia. And I think in academia, the leadership sometimes is more like mentorship and supervision instead of you setting out a vision for the whole team. It's more like you provide a help and guidance for individual. And especially as an ECR, so myself in the second year of my postdoc, I don't really have my own team or lab, but I started to take up some supervision for students, master and PhD student and research assistant. And I found it's quite challenging is that individuals are very different. Sometimes I found, I'm doing great on supervising this student, but next student it's totally different. They're different type of learner. They need different level of guidance, and one may have very clear vision about their goals, but one may not. So I wonder if you have any particular specific advice about how to adjust your strategy to supervising different individuals. And one thing is also I found it's hard to avoid overstep the boundary between making decisions for them and providing the help or guidance they need. Because I sort of still kind of in the mindset of, as a student, if they ask me, there are two statistical methods which they want to choose from, I may just give them the advice, you should go for this one. But sometimes feel that's probably not a good way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. I think, the important process of dealing with different people in the supervision mentorship role is, one, I think, to be approachable. So they first feel like they can come to you and talk to you about stuff, but also to be adaptable, that certain people are going to want more hand-holding and some people are not. And some people I've run into where they're not honest about what they need. So they say, yeah, I've got it all under control. And that's, I think, one of the more difficult ones to try and identify, but do you? So I think trying to find the right balance between giving mini tasks, breaking it up and say, all right, well, next week, let's just get this done. And in the case of show, you do the two methods, going along the lines of, well, why don't you have a look at that? Give me some examples about why you think this method is better than the other, and we'll have a talk about it. I mean, ultimately, as a supervisor, they're coming to you for these decisions, and you don't have to couch it as it's a decision. You can say, this is my strong recommendation, in some cases. And then you can kind of tone it like that if you really feel they're going to go down a wrong track. But science is not, it's not one way is necessarily always the wrong, and the one way is always the right way. And I think we tend to put these decisions in this, there's one right decision, I've just got to find that decision, and I'll be happy. And often we're talking about 55-45 or 52-48. You may get more criticism if you do it one way, or it may not work as well, but it's still valid. And the amount of time and energy we put into something where the ultimate impact isn't really that big. And I think that's one thing to help your students do, is that it's better in some cases to make a decision than to be paralyzed by, I'm going to make the wrong decision here. I don't know if you guys want to.
Can I just add on the piece around adapting your style maybe for different people? A tool that we have at Alzheimer Society when someone starts it's called This Is Me, but essentially it's just a tool to facilitate a conversation when you first start working with someone about that kind of their working style and how you might work together. So it covers quite basic things around kind of how to get the best out of them, but also covers, for example, if they have any kind of neurodiversity and might prefer to have meetings in a different way or receive feedback in a different way. It's often really helpful just to kind of have that tool, because it's just a structure and a framework that you can go to kind of set those boundaries from the beginning. So it's something that could be relevant kind of, to others. So I thought I'd share that.
Yeah. The only thing I would say to your last point about when somebody asks you a question and you feel tempted to give a direct answer, ask them a question back. So turn the question back on them. Usually that will get them thinking, or reframe the question, come at it from a different angle, deflect it off in a different direction, but don't answer, send the question back to them, and that will make them start to think about an answer, and you can start to guide the conversation in the way it needs to go.
I think that's a really interesting point, because something that's kind of come out of all three of your comments from very different perspectives is that importance of the coaching and the not handing answers, but helping people grow towards whichever skills they need to develop. And I think that's come across from the academic, charity and the corporate perspective. So couldn't have summed it up better myself, Simon. We'll go to Sarah next.
Thanks everyone so far, it's been really interesting. So this could be for anyone who feels like they want to answer it. I'm looking to kind of broaden out and think about wider stakeholder networks. So I wonder if anyone has any practical advice or tools for managing wider stakeholder networks around a set cause or around a given vision. Expanding beyond your immediate team into the community, maybe like implementation science.
Do I have any volunteers to jump in first? Go on, Dave.
Okay, yeah. So I think this is actually a very good opportunity to practice leadership skills, this kind of soft power where you don't have necessarily the authority or the weight behind you to do it, and thinking strongly about your audience, their objectives, their desires, and how what you're looking for them to do aligns with what you're doing, and focusing on that shared partnership. I have to do a fair amount of this at the university, where I have to work with IT departments or different researchers who I can't say, well, you have to do this. It's it's more of an I need your help. How can I connect you? How can I be helpful to you? That kind of communal aspect that helps get all of these projects done in a larger scheme of things.
I did wonder whether David or Lucy were going to jump in with some super secret science network that they were going to introduce you to. I mean, the way I would suggest that to somebody, I mean, the great thing is you're, in some way, I'm guessing, associated with an organisation like Alzheimer Society. And in that vein, I would suggest getting involved in what I would call meta activities. So not just about your discipline, but an event like this, presumably there's a lot of prep goes into it. There's a lot of opportunities to put your hand up to get involved in a session like this, or to be a speaker, or to help with one of the breakout sessions, or whatever it might be. Put yourself forward for those opportunities, and then you will start to build a network just by being involved. People will see you in a different light. You'll meet people in a different context. And presuming that Alzheimer's Society is as hungry for volunteers as EDF is for getting involved in these sort of things, that's often a really good way of broadening your network.
And the reason I hesitated, because we used a tool within the management training, I still can't remember, I was hoping it would come to me. But it was kind of an exercise really in terms of a grid of thinking about who those stakeholders are, who was kind of the people that you want to care about your work, or that should care about your work, and how much do they currently know about your work, and just kind of putting them into boxes. I think it sounds like quite a simple task, but just doing that exercise and literally doing it on a piece of paper and thinking, okay, this is a really important stakeholder group for me, and actually I don't think they really know currently what we do, and they should. So it's kind of a really useful tool just to prioritise, because as you say, it could be quite an overwhelming task. So just thinking about who to focus on, who maybe actually already really cares about what you do and they're really engaged, so maybe you could dial down the activity there, because that's a really good baseline for you. So I think I'll let you know if I can think of the tool, but I'm sure there's others out there. But yeah, I think literally doing it on a piece of paper can sometimes be really helpful.
Brilliant, thank you. I've got any other questions? Oh, we're over here.
I was wondering if you had any any opinion on what do you find very challenging on a student or a collaborator, someone that works for you as leaders. And so, yeah, what might be a characteristic that you find particularly challenging? So, for example, I don't know, as a PhD student, it's okay if you need to work. That's not a real example. It's okay if you need to improve your teamwork skills, but what mattered the most is that you know absolutely all the theories, all the research skills, or whatever. And maybe in your experience, you found someone that was lacking that specific thing, and it was absolutely hard to work with. Thank you.
That's a tough question. I feel bad picking on someone. I don't know, Simon, I've not picked on you for a while. Do you want to kick us off?
I mean, this is probably the one question where I am thinking I'm in a very different context to the one that you're talking about. The thing that I was thinking of with the people that I work with, especially when you're leading at scale, is it's amazing how little information people will take in a distracting landscape. So, you know, when you're trying to land a key message, whatever the key message, whatever the flavour of the month is for our organisation, you know, we must focus on X, we must focus on Y. People get distracted by the day-to-day, people get distracted by what they've always known, people think they've heard it but then forget it 2 days later. And getting those key messages to land can be a really frustrating process, especially if it's urgent or important. And so what I've kind of learned is if you have some key piece of information that you need to convey, you need to repeat it and you need to simplify it and you need to repeat it again and make it simpler if necessary. So if I once read somewhere, and it may have been taking it too far, but the communication is repetition. You know, you only start to even take notice of something the third time you've heard it. You know, I'm sure there's some psychology behind that somewhere, but, you know, and then you start to act on it and take it in when you hear it again. So in terms of the frustration, it's you think that you've told somebody, you think you've done a great presentation, you think you've come up with a snazzy line, then you ask them 2 days later and they say, oh, I didn't hear that. You were in the meeting, I saw you, you were definitely there, you asked a question. So you just, when you've got a need to communicate something, accept and plan for the fact that you have to repeat it again and again and again, and then it might sink in.
I think Simon as well, selling yourself short, I think that's a very pertinent point for academia as well. So I think it's really good advice.
I think it might be a human thing.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that. I think it's just humans being humans. Yeah. Lucy?
Yeah, I'm going to answer a slightly different question, but I think that one thing I've kind of learned more as becoming a leader is that people have a natural tendency to like people that are similar to them, and they understand people that are similar to them, and think that obviously there is lots of challenges within that when you're in a leadership role that can lead to kind of unconscious bias. You're supporting people, you're showing preferential treatment to people that are like you and you understand them and how they tick, and obviously that can lead to kind of a lot of the inequities that we see currently. So I think one of the things that I have been very conscious of and has been kind of a journey for me is to really try and understand more about people where actually I'm thinking, I don't quite understand you and where you're coming from. And I think something that I found very powerful is just honestly to have those conversations and to ask open questions, as you referred to, rather than closed questions around kind of what's going on for you at the moment, like how do you think that meeting went for you, and actually trying to understand more about what's the rationale. I'm not thinking, okay, that person is bad at project management or that person just doesn't listen. I'm thinking kind of, is there something here that I need to understand more about and therefore like adapt my style and get the best out of them? So I think that is challenging, but I think recognizing that it's a human condition to have those kind of preferences and really sort of be conscious and challenge those and really understand how you can support everybody to be the best person that they can, essentially.
Yeah, challenging that unconscious bias is so important across the board, definitely. Dave?
Yeah, I think I would just echo a lot of the points that Lucy just made, that, you know, it is frustrating when you feel that somebody's not listening to you, but maybe, unfortunately, that means we just have to listen a bit more and understand them a bit better in terms of why that match isn't happening. And it is important to kind of reevaluate yourself a little bit in some of these cases. Is it just that person's not doing what I want them to do, or do I need to think a bit different about how I approach managing this person and getting the best out of them? So yeah.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm really sorry, but we're coming close to the end of the session, so I am going to have to close for questions, but I think our panellists will be okay. We have a coffee break straight after this. I'm going to nominate them to be approached. Hopefully no one's dashing off instantly. So if you do have questions, please do come speak to our panel and other speakers that you've seen today to bring those questions. I am going to go slightly off script for my last question. Sorry.
Okay.
But I think it's a really interesting one, and I think it'll be most pertinent to the people we have in the room today. I think there's a lot of people in the room, probably myself included, who are thinking about taking those first steps into leadership, wanting to get stuck in. So I would be really interested to know from the whole panel, do you have any practical advice for how someone might be able to take those next steps in leadership and demonstrate leadership skills, even if it's not currently a part of their actual role? So how do you start to sort of move into leadership, even if you've not been thrown into that leadership position? And I'll let you guys go first, because I have thrown this at you as a curveball.
Don't mind starting.
Go for it.
Well, firstly, I'm a passionate believer that I don't think leadership is just a role. I think leadership is a set of qualities. It's a set of skills that anyone can demonstrate. And I suppose I'd just ask a few questions. In your current role, have you ever had to communicate and work with someone to get something achieved? Have you ever had to deliver an outcome using finite resources? Have you ever relied on somebody for success and had them to rely on you? If you can answer yes to any of those, and probably a dozen more questions along a similar vein, then you are demonstrating leadership skills in your role. And if you want to then take that on, I would go back to what I said previously about having those open conversations with whoever your sponsor is, whoever your current leader is, whoever your supervisor is, and then seeking out those opportunities to get involved with stuff that will put you in a more formal setting. But effectively, if you can answer yes to those sorts of questions where you are delivering an outcome that involves influencing others, coordinating with others, planning resources, planning your time, planning other people's time, understanding what your inputs and outputs are going to be, then you're already a leader and you're just waiting for the right role.
Yeah, I would agree. I think people often look for kind of a formal line management experience, and there obviously are ways to do that. You mentioned supervising master's students, supervising interns, but I think actually sometimes it's harder to do that where there isn't a formal agreement in place. So having opportunities to demonstrate the skills that you've described, and also things like active listening, coaching skills, the broader skills that we've talked about during this session, looking for opportunities, taking initiatives, developing peer-to-peer groups, for example, if that's a gap. There's lots of opportunities to do that, and I think this piece about feedback as well that I mentioned earlier is really important. So I think as a leader, you're constantly learning, picking up things as you described through the Magpie approach. So sometimes there's a hesitancy to ask for that feedback. What am I doing well? Where are some areas that I could kind of improve even more? So I think taking that with you and picking up opportunities where you can is really important, and don't kind of wait for you to feel like you're finally in a leadership role, because actually there's lots that you can kind of learn on the way, I would say.
Yeah, and I think from an academic perspective, there's lots of opportunities where there's always, it doesn't take long for you no longer to be the junior member of the lab anymore, and there's always somebody who will need some help and some guidance. But also, if you're feeling a little bit anxious about doing something within the organization, there's loads of leadership opportunities outside of your work. A sports club, another organization that you like being part of. UCL universities have loads of committees that are always looking for people to participate and get involved. Find one that sings to you a little bit and that you want to practice. It's a great place to practice and get some of those repetitions in of what's it like to lead a team or lead a group of people, and in a much potentially lower stakes environment that will make it a little bit easier to find some places where you could improve and figure out how you do it better the next time. It's an iterative process.
Absolutely. I think that transferable skills piece has come from all of our panel today. And it is unfortunately all we have time for from our panel. I would like to thank all of our panel for the fantastic answers that they've given us today. I'd also like to thank you guys for the fantastic questions you've given us, the engagement. It's been an incredible session to chair. I also have a bit of a cheeky, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Simon, but I do want to say an extra special thank you to you for your fundraising and your volunteering that you're doing for the Society. We are a charity. We are dependent on people like Simon. So if you could give my panel an extra huge round of applause, that would be fantastic.